Hey folks, welcome. I hope you're having a great day. I'm Georgina Peard, and in this video, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the core pillar of conscious connecting, which is leaning in. What do I mean by that? Leaning into love, leaning into connection, leaning into intimacy, leaning into vulnerability. So this is based on challenging a core belief that is conditioned or integrated into most of us, and certainly comes from more the ego mind than our deeper truths. And that is that I do not belong. I am separate. I am not safe. I need to fight or compete for my survival, to be heard, to have a place, to be seen, to be loved. I'm not worthy just as I am, right? That's a kind of core belief of our ego minds. And this pillar of conscious connecting is challenging that in the sense that it's like, no, actually, I do belong. And in our deepest selves, in our highest selves, in our core, in our conscious hearts, we know this, right? It's the sense that I belong. I have my place here no matter what. I am connected. We are connected. We are interbeings, interconnected. No matter whether I'm feeling that connection or not, I am connected to all of life, right? So you and I know that in our core. We know that in, maybe it's a concept, or when we're in a heightened state of awareness and consciousness, in our hearts, we know that, right? But then life happens, shit happens, we get triggered, right? Old wounds come up, fear comes up, fear of death ultimately, but that cannot maybe be about death per se, but it's about many other things, which ultimately relates to this fear. Or you having another opinion to me creates some sort of fear for my belonging or my survival, right? It can be things that happen, experiences that happen that kind of give a mirror back, and the thought, the belief is, oh, I don't belong here, I'm not safe, or I'm not good enough. I see all these other people doing these things and having these beautiful lives and being successful, having partners and money, blah, blah, blah. And oh, I'm not that. That's not for me. So all of these situations, or simply it can be like in a relationship, we have a disagreement and we create protection strategies. And these protection strategies, if you look deep enough into you, you will find they're based on this fear of survival, this idea of, I don't belong, I'm not safe. And those protection strategies are either to fight, to compete. They're either to withdraw, pull away, to flight, right? In order to be safe, or they're to fawn, they're to kind of befriend, to adapt, to put on a mask, to be sure that I fit in, that I belong, that I will be loved, that I won't be standing out too weird, and that I can, get under the radar and all's good. These are our protection strategies based on fear and separation. But you and I also know how good it feels when our hearts are open, when we're filled with love, life is moving through our bodies, when we feel a state of inner peace and joy at the same time, gratitude. When this feels so good inside ourselves and is flowing through our bodies and our hearts and our minds, we feel good about ourselves. We feel good about life. We feel good about others. We have confidence to just be ourselves. We so much more easily accept and love others and take care of others. We feel that same love, in fact, for ourselves. So you and I know this, right? So how do we help each other? Because if we're just relying on these strategies of fight, flight, or fawn, we are struggling with this. It's like an inner battle, right? It's an inner turmoil. And really, it's so important in our conscious journey to get present in these moments, because these are the moments that will change our lives. These are the moments. So move from this fear and separation, blame and shame to connection and compassion, intimacy and love, an understanding of our shared humanity. This here is based on we are all connected no matter what. I may be feeling blame and shame, but there's a part of me, my consciousness knows that I am still part of the whole. I am still connected. And based on that, I am going to allow myself to stay in connection. Now, this is the piece that is so important. In order to do that, in order to move from blame and shame to compassion and connection, and to hold ourselves and each other in these moments of contraction and opening, feeling like we're not lovable, we need to withdraw, we need to fight, to opening and being in a state of love. The key is to stay present to our vulnerability. The key is to stay present to our vulnerability. So in those moments of fight or flight or adapting ourselves to fit in, there is a moment where we feel vulnerable, right? This is the key. We feel vulnerable. And can we stay present to that in ourselves first? When we can learn to do that in ourselves, we can learn to do that in other and keep our hearts open to other while they're journeying through this. The challenge is when we're both triggered, we're both in like fight or flight or, triggering each other. How do we both or all, this is the challenge, because we're moving into times where there's going to be more and more of this kind of squeezing us around our fears, with uncertainty, with conflicts, with differences of opinion, with challenging things for our survival. Can we all learn to stay present with our vulnerabilities, our own and each other's? This is the key for conscious connecting. It's a little bit more like advanced stuff, right? It's not the total basics, but this is a fundamental that without this, we risk always being in fear of abandonment, rejection, humiliation, all of these things. And although we cannot guarantee it in the world around us, we can start to build, first of all, a relationship with ourselves, and then the relationships with others around us in our core relationships and core groups. This kind of, I'm going to say safety, but this kind of relating that is based on connection and shared humanity. Take a breath and take a pause here. Because really this is a lot. Wow, the sun is changing. The light is changing in front of me here. we're not going to always feel open. We're not always going to be in agreement with each other. We are going to get triggered. We are going to have wounds come up, fears come up. This is normal. This is part of being human. How can we support each other in that humanness rather than kind of go away and deal with it and come back when you're ready to love me? Because I need you to love me because I'm afraid myself of all these things and in my own survival mode, right? So through conscious relating, conscious connecting, we learn this. We learn and we practice this. Let me check what else I want to say about that. Right. So it's normal to open and close, but what we want to build into our conscious relating is that fundamentally you are safe, you belong, you are good, you are lovable, and you are worthy of love. You do not need to do anything for my love. You do not need to do anything to belong. Right? You do not need to do anything that creates the situation for me to feel love for you. Right? You are love. Now, do we always feel that? No. But we must remember that that is the situation, the truth of the universe. Right? That is the truth of the universe, that we belong. We all belong here. That we are all worthy of love, that we are all worthy of food, of safety, all these things. This is our shared humanity coming from a place of love. Now, I want to tell you a little story about this from my own experience recently. So I'm in a circle that was built up over a number of weeks. And in a circle, we create agreements, like it's a conscious heart circle. We create agreements that allow us to feel that everyone has their place, that everyone can take responsibility for themselves, that everyone has the right to be seen and heard, right? We create some of these agreements together at the beginning. And so generally, this is a context in which we can, start to cultivate and integrate a sense of safety in ourselves and what we need and how we do that. Now, a situation came up where somebody in the group did something, said something, acted in a way which triggered me, and I went into a freeze, and I didn't get to relieve it or release it till the end of that circle. And so when I did soothe myself and my nervous system afterwards, I felt a lot of anger come up. So I felt angry that that person had sort of penetrated or impacted my world for me to feel unsafe, right? Natural reaction, anger. The thing was that as I felt that anger, I felt this sort of my opinions and my beliefs and a sense of righteousness that I was right to feel what I was feeling. And they were, in that sense, wrong to act in the way they did that made me feel bad, right? We confronted each other, or we met to have a conversation around this, and he did not at all understand my perspective or my reaction, and said I was overreacting, which is a good thing to say to a woman in anger. But and I couldn't understand him, how he couldn't see my point of view and the situation and how it had the consequences it had, or how he wasn't apologetic for that. And I realized, because he sort of confronted me about that, why me doing that puts everything of our relationship into question, and you need to now, you don't trust me at all. You want to cut our relationship. And I was like, that's an interesting challenge. So I took away a little bit of the energy around what had happened, and I let myself focus on that. And I realized that my protection strategy, okay, 1 was the freeze, 2 was the anger and the confrontation, and 3 was I'm going to withdraw. I'm going to take away my love. I'm going to withdraw because I cannot love you if I don't feel this way in my heart or something. You know, if I can't feel connected to you, I want to disconnect. But when I looked deeper at it, I was also proposing to pull the plug, disconnect before I could be thrown out, rejected, judged for my reaction. They were both present. The kind of, I'm going to create safety for myself, but I'm also going to take myself out so that you can't hurt me again. Ooh, this is quite a process, right? So what I want to get to is that it was very uncomfortable for me to stay present, because I needed to look at myself and be very vulnerable in front of others. I mean, this was quite strong, right? Doesn't always need to be this strong, but I had to get vulnerable to stay present. I had to feel my emotions. And I remember vividly at one point going, I'm not going to show him my tears. He's not even worthy of my tears. And you know, this was the key here, was that what allowed me to eventually get vulnerable and to own my part of the whole thing, and to really come back, because we were connected, but we were connected in conflict. We were never disconnected. We were both processing, and we were part of a bigger thing, but we were still connected. But it didn't feel comfortable. We were in conflict, and I was in conflict inside myself, and I felt, you know, fear for different things. But I decided to stay in and rumble with it all and actually be seen with it all. And the difference was that I created safety for myself to soften and to feel. And this is what I think is what we need to get comfortable with our vulnerability, right? If I'm in a constant overwhelm and unsafe, you can't do this. You can't be in connection. You need to take yourself out. And in this situation, I wasn't in constant connection. It was an online thing. So it was like we were online once and then we were offline, not seeing each other for a couple of days. In that sense, we did separate and come back into connection, separate. And this is how it worked, so that I could create the safety to feel, to soften, to investigate, to feel my anger, to feel my numbness or my shutdown, my freeze, to feel my shame then when he challenged me, to feel my fear of being thrown out or rejected or judged by the group. But this willingness to sit there in shame, or to sit there in anger, to sit there in confusion and be seen there by the group is terrifying for a part. But that part of me that knew somehow I am connected, I am loved, I belong, allowed me to go through that and not only sort of create more connection for everyone to feel good, but more safety for everyone to drop, and inspiration for everyone to feel more safe together, you know, to understand what that looks like. I felt like I was going through the fire. So that's quite a strong example. But you and I, we know what it's like when we're in a big trigger. I'm using a big trigger as an example. Of course, they could get much stronger than that. But on a day-to-day basis, there will be things that I'll feel myself closing my heart around, judging someone, judging myself, blaming myself. And I know that it feels horrible. It feels really, really horrible. I know that love is the only answer. Flowing energy is the only answer, only truth. It's where I want to be. But I'm learning to be okay and feel the energy when I'm contracted or tense or a little shut down. Right. So you get the picture, right? You're getting the picture here. The question we can pose ourselves in these moments when we're conscious of the closure or the disconnect is, how can, you know, we want to get to the place, how can I open my heart? But it may not be available for quite a while. You know, it maybe be too much of a jump. It's like, no way. It's more like, can I allow this? Can I take a moment to be present, to regulate, to soothe myself in this moment, to allow what is? Can I love myself enough to allow myself to feel the disconnect, the shutdown, the pain, the fear, the anger, whatever that might be, the blame, and allow it to be there for that moment? But to stay present to myself and potentially in the presence of another. But really, first, we're with ourselves. We're self-regulating. And then from this place of self-regulation, we can soften. We can soften into our mind. We can soften into our heart. We create space, and we can start to become aware, become mindful, to investigate a little bit. Wow, what's actually going on here? What's actually going on? And then gradually from that place, when we realize that this is so human, so normal to feel that. And this is, you know, we can do this alone. We can do this with a therapist, but wow, if we can do this with others that can support us to see and to love us as we're finding, as we're investigating into that inquiry, it's like, oh. And then the heart opens, there's compassion for ourselves. Probably others are holding that compassion for us before we can even find it in ourselves, right? This is the gift. And then from this place, wow, the depth of intimacy. From this place of softening, I can maybe ask to be held, right? So if I'm doing this alone, I'm holding myself emotionally, energetically, maybe physically. If I'm doing this with other, they're holding me also energetically, emotionally. And once I've softened enough and I feel safe enough to feel what I need, perhaps I can then ask to be held physically. Me, myself, I find that most of the time, a lot of my story of like unsafeness, blah, 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 it's just like, oh, can you just hold me? And then all that inner turmoil and blame and shame just kind of falls away. And I'm just like, oh, I just didn't feel safe. I was in survival mode again. And just by breathing with another being, I regulate, we co-regulate, and we come back to our nature, that we are interconnected beings. that we belong, that we are safe, that we are loved, the universe loves us, right? That we are pure magic. So this is what I want to, this is what I'm creating spaces for us, to experience, to explore, to practice, and then take into our own lives and practice more, and then, and you know, moving like this. So what if we could create relationships and groups based on compassion, in our shared humanity, based on connection, that we are connected no matter what, rather than fear and separation? What would happen if you and your partner could feel that together? What would happen if you and your group or your colleagues all felt so safe that they could, you know, lean in like this to support each other and bring out the best? This is what I think is fascinating, and this is what I want to create spaces for us to experience together. I would love to hear your comments around this. There's so many more examples and things, and you could probably share your own of how this works and shows up for you, or just your dream of what you know is possible when we're connected. But what does connection mean for you? I'd love to know this. What does connection mean for you? What does conscious connection mean for you? And can you rumble a little bit with the idea that even if you are a little bit shut down or in fear, or have got armor on your heart, that you are still connected? If you're in conflict with someone, you are connected. You're not separate and isolated. I hope to see you soon. Thank you for listening.